Anna Toff. Could you explain in more detail what the Scientology training really consists of? I know about auditing, but is that all that there is about it? I've read about word clearing and other things that didn't make any sense to me. I'm very curious to understand, what do people actually do and what do they feel they achieve by doing so? Okay, well, this actually could take me hours to explain because training in Scientology is a very involved process. But to summarize, to be really, really simple about this answer, basically people are taking classes. I mean, that's, it's what's complicated about it is all the methodologies of it and all the various things they learn. But basically, training is classes that they take. And the way that Scientology teaches classes is on a one-on-one individual basis. So they have a whole classroom of students, and there is not a teacher, but a course supervisor. And that person oversees the entire room of students. And this is something I used to do for years. And they watch the students to see if there are any indications that the students are not understanding their materials. And the materials being course packs and books and lectures, all by L. Ron Hubbard, or based on L. Ron Hubbard's works. So let's say you have, and so the way this works is the supervisor is trained to look for times when a student maybe gets drowsy, starts falling asleep, or is disagreeing with the material, or is asking a lot of questions about it. In that case, what they do is they look for what they call a misunderstood word. They look for some word or words in the text or in the lecture that the person doesn't understand. And they'll spot check them, they'll ask them the definitions of words until they find one that the person can't give an answer to, and then they'll make them look that word up in a dictionary. And misunderstood words are what Hubbard says are the primary reason why a person fails to understand something, gives up on a course of study, asks questions, doesn't understand what he's reading, is because of the words. And that's not original with Hubbard, and that's not actually Hubbard's discovery. That was something that a couple English teachers who were Scientologists gave to Hubbard as study remedies and study methodology, and he took it and made it and claimed that it was his, and he lied through his teeth about that. So that's one thing that a supervisor will watch for and will interact with students to handle. Another one is where the student has what they call a lack of mass, where they don't have the thing that they're studying about. And the way this is most easily explained is if you're studying about dogs and you've never seen a dog or heard a dog, and then reading the words about a dog and not having any mass, not having anything to connect that to, can create headaches and make your stomach feel funny and that sort of thing. Like, it actually gives you physical symptoms. And so then the remedy for that is to look at a picture of a dog, or draw a picture of a dog, or what you see in some pictures, they have clay, and they'll take the clay and mold it into a dog, and now they have some mass of a dog, right? And then the last one is, the last thing they'll look for is a confusion, or a person just, being like, whoa, I just am not tracking with what's going on here. In which case they look for what that's called a skipped gradient, where the person jumped too high. You went from, first grade math to calculus. It's too much of a jump. It's a skipped level, and you skip some levels in between. And that can happen in study, and that has its own, thing that happens with that. Now, I've observed all of these phenomena many, 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 many times with students that I supervised. So, is it real? Well, I observed it, and I resolved it with students by looking up words, or, doing the lack of mass thing or whatever. So I think there is some validity to it. And also, I'm comforted in that by knowing that it wasn't a Hubbard invention either. So I tend to give it a little bit more credence. Some teachers actually came up with that. Is it the be-all, end-all of study? Absolutely not. There's a lot more going on in learning and in teaching people things than just that. And so Scientology tries to reduce it down to just those three things. So those things have a lot to do with training in Scientology, and those are the way those methodologies are used extensively in Scientology training. Training is done in Scientology in order to make people learn how to be Scientology auditors, counselors. And that's what all the training is leading toward. And what you're supposed to learn in doing that and learning about being a counselor is all about the mind and all about the spirit and how life works, because Hubbard explains it all in the materials. And so by becoming an auditor, you actually learn how other people think, why they think that way, why they act that way, why people do what they do. And it's supposed to sort of give you an explanation for all kinds of things in life. Now, Scientology is not a complete dogma. There's all kinds of holes and pitfalls and things that are never taken up or answered in Scientology. So you're really left lacking, but the mantra is that it explains everything. So you keep sort of filling in the holes yourself, or you just kind of ignore them and say they're not really that important. But that's what Scientology training is, the value of what it's supposed to provide you. Whereas if you just get the auditing or the counseling in Scientology, you're not learning about your mind or about yourself spiritually. You're just relieving spiritual trauma and emotional trauma. And you're getting rid of that, but you're not learning much of anything. So the training is supposed to balance that, so you get both ends. You get, spiritual gain, but you also learn what that spiritual gain is all about and what your spiritual abilities are supposed to be, stuff like that, right? That's all covered in the training side, which is why they encourage people to do it. So that's my short answer for Scientology, what Scientology training is all about.